Immigration is a central part of the United States. We are often thought about as a country of immigrants, which we are. And today, more than ever, immigration is playing a very salient role in American politics. In the past 40 years, the US has transformed tremendously demographically. Today, those who are foreign-born make up 12% of the population. And with that change, there also comes racial change in the sense that Latinos have now surpassed Blacks as the largest racial and ethnic group in the United States, making up 17% of the population. And by 2050, demographers predict that whites will lose majority status. And so this demographic transformation raises both hopes and fears. It raises hopes because immigrants continue to fill a vital economic role, enhance culture and diversity in our multiracial and multi-ethnic society. But at the same time, these same hopes also engender fear amongst many individuals in the public. There is often discussions that immigrants are taking jobs away from native-born Americans, leading to a cultural demise or a loss of national identity. As well as the fact that these immigrants have been talked about as overly relying on our welfare system. And so all of these fears has the potential to lead to a backlash. And essentially then, that is the main question that we pose in our book, is how is this transformation affecting US politics? And we examine whether immigration is affecting core political decisions of white Americans. White Americans still make up the majority of the public. More importantly, they make up the majority of the voting public. And so it is especially important to look at how immigration influences their partisanship, their voting behavior, as well as their policy positions. And while we're not the first to look at the way different issues affect these different sorts of political behaviors, we are one of the first to really look at the central role that immigration can play in these core political decisions. So our theory is pretty straightforward. We first argue that immigration is just something that's too big to miss. Immigration is 25% of the population. Immigration is, of course, a key issue in politics today. We only have to look at what's been happening in the presidential race to know that in nearly every conversation, in nearly all of the debates, immigration has played a central role in all of these conversations. And on top of the fact that immigration is becoming more and more relevant to everyday lives, there's a prevalent threat narrative exists in this country that's largely espoused by the media, but as well as by political elites. This narrative emphasizes negative aspects of immigration, not so much on the positive sides. And whether or not these actual costs and benefits are true, most of the American public believes in this narrative. 70% think that immigration is a burden to US society, and these are public opinion polls that are taken of mostly white Americans. 62% think that they add to the crime problem, and 59% think that immigrants take away jobs from native-born Americans. And finally, along with this prevalent threat narrative, the two political parties have distinct positions on immigration. Republicans have a much more restrictive position on immigration, whereas Democrats either are agnostic on immigration or tend to support a more inclusive or progressive form on immigration reform and policy making. Right? So in summary, we make the following argument in the book, that whites see the US as changing, both racially and ethnically. Many believe that immigration is driving negative changes, and that the Republican Party offers stronger opposition to immigration. And so for many, this is a very powerful motivation to defect to the Republican Party. Now, of course, we've seen this partisanship before in our past. We only need to go back to the 1960s to see how whites essentially defected defected to the Republican Party in support of civil rights in the 1960s. We've also seen immigration backlash in different points of history, depending on the wave of immigrants coming in. And also, if we look to studies that have been conducted in Europe, we've seen large-scale support amongst the public for these right-wing anti-immigrant parties. So this backlash that we're documenting is not novel or new, but really just part of a longer thread of our history, specifically in the United States, on the way that immigration can shift these core political decisions.